everybody, Invisiblekatana here doing a full season review for Altered Carbon. If you guys have not checked out the season, this will be a complete spoiler review for the entire thing, so definitely check it out. If you're only a few episodes in, check out my review for the very first episode. It's spoiler free for the first half for anyone who hasn't seen it at all, and then the spoilers kind of come in for just that first episode. But getting right into it, I really enjoyed this first season. I'm definitely looking forward to the second. One thing I'm interested in is whether or not it's going to be as good as this one, because a big part of why I loved it is the fact that there was so much mystery in this. It was like, all right, you start off, and that's kind of what hooked me with the trailer, aside from the insane visuals. It was like, all right, we have this guy, because I didn't know the story going in, as far as, people can have their stacks, so you can go into different bodies, or, if you're super duper rich, you can upload yourself to satellites and stuff. And I was like, okay, this guy wants someone to solve his own murder. And I was like, I don't think he's a ghost. He could have been a hologram because all the other stuff they showed. But I was like, I feel like that's really him, and it turns out it is. And it goes into this insane murder mystery where one of my favorite things is that they did some super easy foreshadowing in the very beginning. I'm pretty sure it was like the first line where it's like, oh, I didn't kill myself. And, like, I don't think it was my wife, but I know I didn't kill myself. And then it was like, surprise, surprise, he actually did, because he forgot that he was such a terrible human being, and messed him up. Granted, he was drugged, because he wouldn't have done that before, but he was drugged, so it was that whole thing. But I was like, that's good foreshadowing. I was like, oh, that was like one of the first things they said, like one of the first or the second sentences they mentioned, when it was like, I definitely didn't kill myself, and I don't think it was my wife. But I love the way it was paced out. It was just like this crazy murder mystery. And I was like, all right, so who killed this guy? Why would they want to kill this guy? Could have been his son, who we find out had like a clone of him, that was him in Osaka. And then we found out that it like beat the crap out of his son. And then there's like, there's kind of the potential that it was, one of his daughters, because she actually took the one of the mother's clone bodies for a minute. And it turned out that she was like, why would any of us really, want to kill our dad? If he dies, we get nothing. That's in his will. So we'd be penniless. So of course I wouldn't do it, and no one else would want to. Then it goes into the clone thing, and it was like, all right, this is really interesting. Like, there's always these little steps, and then there's crazy secondary mysteries going on where we have, technically it was one person, but he was double sleeved. He was in two bodies at once. So the Dimitri brothers, where one of them knows that it's like he knows exactly who this character is. It's like, this is the actual person within the sleeve of Riker. And then the second time they encounter each other, the other brother only knows him as Riker the cop. And it was like, well, what in the world's going on here? So it was like other mysteries going on. We find out that Riker himself, the body at least, was actually tied to Ortega, and that's why she was like so on Kovac when he first showed up. And it was like, that's why she was at the hospital like instantaneously, and that's why she was kind of like just all over him, following him, because she cared about that body. And one thing, and I'm pretty sure they mentioned it somewhere in there, but I don't think he's like officially dead, which is the interesting thing. Like, I'm pretty sure they don't say like his stack was destroyed, unless I missed that part. But he does die, and then they just can't afford it. Like, they talked about how they were like she's trying to afford to pay everything off. So it was interesting where they kind of talk about that, and it didn't seem like it was a permanent thing for him, but they don't talk about that too much. But I just love the way all that stuff was spaced out. It was like, all right, there's this other mysteries, the action in general, every time something goes crazy. The shootouts are really cool. The hand-to-hand stuff is really sweet, especially when Rey showed up, and of course she comes in, with a katana. So naturally I was like, perfect character. Their in-fight between Kovac and Rey was a full-on katana fight, so naturally I love that as well. But all in all, the action was definitely sweet. Like, they had some like cinematography for this is insane. Like, as somebody who like actually wants to make videos or make movies and do photography, I was like, there's just some shots in here I was like, this just looks good. Some of the style choices, outside of just like, this is where the camera is, when they first go into like the VR reality, and everything's like sort of distorted, and the contrast is really high, and things like change colors as we're looking at them. I love that idea. I was like, that's a really cool concept to show, like, this is the difference between the real world and VR. And then sometimes it would be like distorted VR when something was wrong, then it would have the different images. And other times, if it's just VR, like when Kovac was a kid, it's just a little warped image on the edge, where it's kind of like a bubble image, fisheye. So I thought that was really cool. I was like, that's a cool stylistic choice. But like I said, some of the shots were great. My favorite has to be when Kovac sees the ship blow up, and it's just ash and like a burning forest around him, and they pan it in slow motion. I was like, this is a great looking shot. Like, that whole segment, I was like, I could probably watch this thing rotate around him forever because that visually just looked really good. Like they had some great visuals. Early on with the flashbacks, like when he first gets to the AI hotel and he has the flashback of the ash, I thought, just design wise, that looked really cool as well, with him hallucinating the ash falling down and he's just sitting in the bed. I was like, that looks really sweet. So ton of insanely great visuals throughout the season. Like I said, the action was really good. Both gunplay and hand-to-hand combat was really sweet. The characters I all thought were actually really well done. I love Poe, even though unfortunately he gets deteriorated at the end of the season. I thought he was a really funny character. And at first, if you watched my episode 1 review before this one came out, I thought he was a human character. I just assumed he lived really long. And, they talk about, the bodies and stuff like that. So I was like, oh, he just lived really long and maybe just jumped from body to body. Or he was just in one body and it was able, because they do eventually get to the point of, they're synthetic bodies. So I just assumed that that's what that was. And, in some way, he just lived a super long time. And then it turned out that he was legitimately just an AI. And I was like, oh, well, that's interesting. I definitely thought he was a human, mostly because of the fact that he owned the hotel. So I thought it was like, of course he's human. He just lived for a super long time. And it was like, nope, he's totally an AI character. He goes, and meets his buddies, or, like, I think once or twice throughout the season, or 3 times maybe. But it was like, nope, he's an AI. He just happens to own the hotel himself as an AI. And I was like, well, that's very interesting. It seems so weird to me, but, it's the crazy future. But it was a really cool character, definitely funny, always getting on Kovach's nerves, which I personally enjoy because he was just always letting people in his room and stuff. And then at the end, when Kovach is trying to, like, basically, do everything himself, and they just kick the door in, and he's just mad at everybody, like, would you stop helping me? And he's like, technically, I didn't let him in this time, so it was good. So I really liked his character, so it sucked that he, died at the end of it. But he definitely had a really good storyline as far as basically helping another character, because we have, this war vet where he basically, he and Kovach end up fighting, and then we find out that he has a daughter who was beaten and kind of just left, and so there's this mystery of what happened with her. And that's another thing I loved. Everything tied in together. And sometimes that can be convoluted, but it worked really well in this. At least I felt like it did. I was like, sometimes you can have that where, there's all these different mysteries, because even Ortega herself, she kind of had her own mystery going on. I was like, well, what happened here? And, like, what happened with that? All of it tied together. Like, Riker dying in the first place was because Ray had to, well, basically it was because he wouldn't stop. So Ray was like, all right, we gotta just get him out of here. It wasn't like she needed to do it. It was just she had to because he kept coming at him. But I thought it was so cool. I was like, all right, sometimes it can feel convoluted and it's just like, oh, that was just a dumb excuse. But I was like, everything seems like it worked. It wasn't like this overly convoluted thing where this happened and then this had to happen and it was just it just randomly happened like this. I was like, nope, this was set out this way, this was done that way. Ray was at the top the whole time. And it just kind of trickled down from there. The main guy's wife, or not the main character, but the guy who died, his wife was the one that set him up, and the reason she did it, and all this other stuff, and why she killed. I can't remember the guy's name, but for some reason I remember Ava. Like, I feel like they said her name like a million times more than they said the actual Marine character's name. So Ava's daughter. But the way all that stuff was handled, like I said, I feel like it all just gelled at the end, and it all made perfect sense. I love the revelations. Like, everything that kept happening was insane. Finding out that Ray was the bad guy I thought was interesting. I kind of wish he was the good guy a little bit, because I would have liked to have seen, we have these two siblings. We get like that cool fight sequence during the flashback episode, which I really loved. It's probably my favorite episode overall. But we got like that cool fight scene when they reunite after a long time, and they realize, like, crap, it's my brother and it's my sister, and he realizes, I left because I thought she was going to be totally protected, and that was, it was absolute BS. So we get a cool fight sequence with them teaming up, but I kind of wish we had more of that. But we do get some great fight scenes between them, and the fight scenes in general were great. Ortega had some great ones, especially, unfortunately, they had to give her a robot arm, but after that sequence, which was also a really cool fight scene, it's hard to do is a really good fight scene in an elevator, but I feel like they did a great job with that one. And that was one of those sequences. I feel like there were maybe like 10 different times where I was like, I don't know if everyone's gonna live. Like, Ortega had a few moments where I was like, I don't think she's gonna make it, especially that first time. I mean, he took a chunk out of her arm, and then he took a chunk out of her stomach. I was like, I don't think she's gonna live. And then the guy sacrificed himself, and he was shot in the stack and died. Her whole storyline, she ends up just alone. Everybody's just dead. Like, they killed her partner, who was kind of like a mentor to her. She found out that the chief of police was, in the pocket, and that's why that ended up happening. So she was mad at him. And then after everything gets super crazy, and Ray is like, well, now I have to teach my brother a lesson. Ortega's entire family gets wiped out, like her mom, her dad, even her cousins. And it was just like, this is nuts. Like, this is just dark. Like, her whole storyline is just freaking depressing. And then ultimately, she has to watch like the body of her boyfriend kind of just take off with this other dude in control, and they were cool by the end. But still, it's kind of just like, man, she's ultimately just left alone. Like, technically, I'm sure she ends up being friends with the family, but it's like, I mean, she gained 3 people. She lost quite a bit more though, and it's just like, man, that really sucks for her. Like, her storyline, like, she was cool at the end, but it was just like, yeah, that's messed up. Like, she lost a lot, and then of course being tortured and sent through the loop over and over again. But it was just all the revelations when they show that Ray was in the different bodies. That was really cool, because I was like, okay, so he wipes the first little screen away, and it's the woman with the snake, and I was like, well, I didn't see that coming, because I'm like, she definitely knew that he was at the party, because the guy's like, I have an envoy, like the last living envoy. So I was like, she was definitely at that party, so she knew it was him. And then they go back, and then I forgot who the second body even was, and then he goes to the third body, and it was the little girl from like the second episode. It was either the first or second episode, and I knew something was off with that little girl, because she was kind of serious when she was talking about, like, especially the way she said it was. She said, we've been friends since we were little kids, and I'm like, she at max was probably 10 years old. So I was like, that seems super weird. And I thought they were just gonna say it actually ended up being a grown woman that was put into a little girl's body. I don't know why that would happen, but the first episode was this little girl who's like 7 put into like a 40-year-old woman's body. So I was like, it could have just been that crazy sort of thing. But she was actually on a school trip, so I was like, is she hiding in the? It was just super weird. But that totally explains it, because it was actually his sister, kind of just spying on him and being like, all right, well, I just want to see what my brother's up to, what he's doing. So all the revelations I thought were definitely entertaining to watch. It was just like, all right, that's insane. That's really cool. That's crazy. Yup, I thought somebody was going to die here. A lot of people, of course, do end up dying in this show, but I thought it was really well done. Like, I really love the show. It's definitely got that hardcore. It's basically a hardcore Blade Runner, and that's probably a little disrespectful. I mentioned that before in my first review. I was like, it's definitely got that Blade Runner vibe, and taken from that. And then I found out afterwards that it was a novel, which it still could have been inspired easily by Blade Runner, or even like the story that inspired the film Blade Runner. So it might be a little bit disrespectful to the author of that, but I love what they did with this story. Really looking forward to season 2, and I am curious. I hope it can kind of keep the great pacing of this, but that's always the thing with shows that start their first season with like a great mystery. It's like, all right, well, if you do the mystery and it's solved, it's always like, well, the second season is just going into something totally different. It could be another big mystery, and some shows have had that, not worked out so well. But for this one, I'm just hoping it works. And I think it could. I mean, I feel like there's so much more than just, this just happened to work, because there were like 3 mysteries in one, and then they all, of course, literally came all together. So, I think it just had that advantage going forward, because it was like, well, what's this and what's that, and then everything, we started getting a bunch of answers, and now going forward, it's just us in this world with this character, and he had to kill his sister at the end, and he's kind of going forward with the idea that he can find the woman that he loved, because potentially she was backed up by his sister before everything was all said and done. So definitely interesting. Like I said, I'm looking forward to season 2 without a doubt, but this, I would say, was a great first season. It was just like super over the top, super raunchy. It was just like, it just nude people all over the place. It was just tits and dicks all over the freaking place. Definitely raunchy and definitely violent. Like, the way people die in this is just like intense. And just the concept, them talking about people, living for centuries and stuff, going into different bodies, people having the religious element of not being in different bodies, and, being strung up again, even if that means they can say, this is who killed me, and, that sort of element. So I love that idea of it, the spiritual versus the, the spiritual and religious, and then just like technological side of it. It's kind of all 3 were kind of thrown in and given their own separate points throughout the season. So I actually really enjoyed that as well. A lot of the stuff they talk about, the guy reuniting with his wife Ava, and then she's of course in a man's body, and it was like seeing that kind of play out where he's freaked out at first, but then he's able, you can see, like, and he kisses, I guess you would still say her, yeah, he kisses her hand, And it was like, okay, you can see how that plays out and how it's just his wife and stuff. And I was like, I like that idea, just that concept, because obviously we are not there yet, clearly. And that's leagues beyond. That's legitimately going into someone else's body. We aren't even remotely close to people being able to accept that. So it was cool to watch it. I enjoyed that element of it. But all in all, definitely a great first season. Like I said, looking forward to it. Getting to season 2, I don't know if that's official. If Bright got a second movie, I think this deserves a second season. But that's my take on it. I really enjoyed it. I don't know if I'm gonna really check out the novels. It's mostly because I'm just busy. I got time to watch it and just do other stuff while I'm watching the episode. But I don't know if I got time to just stop and read like a whole epic series. But I might. I don't really know. But definitely a great story. I think it was adapted well visually. Like I said, just phenomenal. I love the visuals for this. So really enjoyed it. Obviously, I'm hoping you have seen it. If you haven't, then I spoiled like a lot of great stuff, but I would love to know what you guys thought about this first season. So please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts about it, least favorite parts about it. If you've read the novel, I would love to know how you guys feel about this adaptation. If you think it's done justice, if I'm sure they left some stuff out. I feel like there's a lot that was covered. The only thing that may have been left out was probably some of the extra stuff during the flashback episode. We really don't see anything that happens with Kovacs. It was like, join me. And then it was like, boom, it skipped a bunch of years. And then it was like, oh, I'm back in my old body again. We don't see like anything that he did outside of joining. Because I'm sure there's stuff there. Because they do reference, it was actually in an earlier episode when because of course I can't remember her name, but the woman that we find out later on actually made the stacks, which I thought that was a really cool, like it was a minor thing, but this woman who was like the terrorist leader was making this rebellion because she was the one that made stacks in the first place, because she thought she was giving something to humans, and then she realized what she was giving to mankind was the people in power just stay in power. And I was like, that's an interesting, dark, sad concept of near immortality. But there's a part where she talks about when she talks about the training of VR torture, and he mentions how he was in that mission where he should have died, but he didn't during that explosion. And I was like, it would have been cool to see some of the little things that kind of caught his attention as he was going through, and he was getting closer and closer to rebelling. But of course, the main thing was his sister. I think that would have been cool. I feel like maybe that's like the little bit of stuff that was left out, because that was really skipped over. Like it was like, boom, killed my dad, join us, boom, I'm an adult, and then I ran into my sister, and that was pretty much how that went, because the main story was him being with the rebellion. At least that's what I'm calling. I know they had an actual. I'm pretty sure that group had an actual name, but I'm going Star Wars style. It's just the rebellion. But yeah, all in all, I thought it was really well done. Like I said, would love to know what you guys thought about it. So please put your comments down in the comment section below, and of course, thanks for watching.